We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It's Sunday, and Sundays are always kind of hard. There's not a lot going on, not a lot of new stuff. There's developing things, and of course, we'll talk about them. But it's still a weird day. It's a hard day. Yesterday, we had kind of a weird day on the podcast. Of course, Ed was on the show, but we had the trouble with the power, and I had to do two separate parts. And it's weird when I look at what's going uh, on the audio podcast, the audio version of it. There's a lot fewer listeners than what normally happens given any particular day. I don't know if that's just a glitch within the website. I've seen that happen before. It doesn't matter. We do a new one every day, so we'll see what happens with this. As I was setting up for this, I always did the audio, and now I'm doing the video. It's one thing to do TikToks with video. You can set it up pretty quickly. It's 1 or 2 minutes. It's no big deal. But I caught myself as I was setting up to do this podcast. I was going, God, my face looks weird. It looks red. Wait, this looks like there's something there. It's not. It's just a shadow. And then I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you worried about what you look like? You don't have much to work with in the first place. Fact is, you shouldn't even be on fucking camera. Just go with what you got and be glad that you at least got that. So anyway, I'm not going to worry about my face or anything like that. We're just going to do what the fuck we do on the podcast. I need to give a shout out to one of our listeners. He's been on the show a couple times. He's sent a number of emails. His name is Fred, good friend of the show. I've talked to him a number of times. Great guy. He's in Chicago, I think. Well, Fred was the first one to actually send something to that P.O. box. Everybody said, you need a P.O. box to send you stuff. And he was the first one to do it. He sent a nice letter. And because we share a mutual appreciation of Culver's fast food, he sent me a gift card for Culver's, and that was very, very nice. So thank you, Fred. I appreciate that. Now, when I say this, when I bring this up, I'm not suggesting you out there have to send me anything. It's a little weird for me when people send me stuff because I don't know what to do with that. Why do you do that? I appreciate it, Fred. Fred and I have talked a lot, but don't feel obligated to send me anything. As I've said before, I don't know who's sending something. We have another listener who we talked about in the last podcast said she was sending a care package. She's one of the ones that said I should have a PO box because she wanted to send this care package, and it was supposed to be there today, but the post office is only open till noon on Saturdays, and I couldn't get there, so I'll pick it up Monday. Don't you worry, I will grab it. But again, this isn't a passive aggressive way of saying please send me shit. You don't have to send me shit. If you're playing something in your mind, do I or don't I? Just don't. It's not important. We're just doing a podcast here. I'm not trying to grift my listeners. Anyway, it's Sunday, and we're coming up on a week that I think is going to be pretty crazy. I think we'll see Jack Smith come forward with some indictments. We'll see it moving along a little bit further with Georgia as well. I don't know if Georgia's going to come next week. Probably not. Georgia probably won't come until after Jack Smith comes out with the January 6th indictments. And it's funny. We may talk about this later in the show. Remember how the Republicans were always talking about work requirements. If you're getting Medicare, if you're getting some kind of welfare, if you're getting Social Security, you should be made to work for that money, even though we've all paid money over the decades to be qualified for getting those kinds of benefits. I mean, we paid for that shit, but they were all about work requirements. So now what's in front of Congress right now, something they've got to get fixed, and it's rather pressing, is the funding bills and budgets and such. Because if they don't get it done by October 1st, guess what? They're going to shut down the government. Now, this is a much different thing than the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling would have meant that we defaulted on our loans. Much bigger deal. We've seen the government shut down before. The Republicans are always behind it. And um, it is harmful to the country and to the people in the country and businesses and everything. It's not as devastating as the debt ceiling. So we've seen it before. And in October 1, I think we have to have the budget thing all figured out. So what does what does Congress do? On Thursday, they go on their summer recess. You know how long that is? 6 fucking weeks. So they're going to be gone from now until September 1st. And then between September 1st and October 1st, they got to figure out all the funding bills and all that stuff and keep the government open. It's just ironic to me that they are pushing people who work hard, try to live a decent life. Some people living hand to mouth, and they're telling us, you're not working enough, you got to work. And then these motherfuckers take a 6-week vacation. And this is just one of many vacations every year. These fuckers are hardly working. And in spite of the vacations, a lot of times these fuckers don't show up to votes or anything like that. They're getting paid $175,000 a year, roughly. And they show up. Maybe they don't show up. Oh, we got a 6-week vacation. The thing I saw that was kind of funny was they were scheduled to leave on Friday, but it turned out that a lot of them, most of them, left on Thursday. Now, why would you do that? Well, I think some of these members of Congress thought Jack's coming out with the indictments on Friday. I don't want to be anywhere near here if he does that. So they blew out of town on Thursday, a day early. Apparently, 6-week vacation wasn't enough. They had to add an extra day. Just, it's fucking ridiculous. There's so many changes we've got to make in our government, our Congress, our presidency, for that matter. They've been in a situation they can get away with whatever they want to do, which is weird because they're supposed to be serving us. They're public servants, but it ends up us serving them. Totally fucking backwards. We've got to figure this out, get it straight, and put them to work doing what they're supposed to be doing, working for us. All right. Got a couple of emails. Actually, one email, one came from the website where the audio podcast is. First one comes up. I think this is coming from Deborah. Good morning, Mike. Hope your weekend is wonderful and you're staying cool because it's hot as shit in California. I got to be honest with you. I was out yesterday. My wife and I were just goofing off. We didn't have a lot going. We did a couple of things, but the fucking weather was beautiful. It was like 77 degrees, no humidity. I have nothing to complain about. But I'm sorry for you in California and everywhere else in the country where you've got sweltering heat. I have some friends in Arizona. They've had 30 days of over 100 degrees. It's fucking ridiculous. But there's no global warming. There's no climate change. There's a lot of things going on in this world, but in this country, because of climate change, and the Republicans continue to want to ignore it. If for no other reason, that's why we need to kick them out in 2024 to get a handle on the problems in this world that may end up killing us all over time. So we need to vote them out. Anyway, Deb goes on to say, I am writing because I think the reason the media and 45's base keep asking what will happen if he wins is that they intend to say he won even if he didn't. Yeah, I think that goes without saying. They did not succeed January 6th, so they're already planning how to place his human piece of shit back in office. Thanks to you, I have complete confidence that the motherfuckers will never, ever hold the position of power again. And as far as the Secret Service, he should be stripped of all benefits, just like all of the other treasonous, useful idiots in Congress. When Jack decides to bring the hammer down, every single one of them should be charged for the money we wasted on their sorry motherfucking asses as they rot in jail. I gotta wonder, I get a lot of ladies writing me, and they're swearing a lot. I feel like I'm kind of a bad influence on some people, unless you always swore like that. I mean, I have a problem with you swearing. I don't think it's a big deal. But it was funny. My mom, when we were growing up, she never swore, and 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 she always admonished us for swearing. But by the time we were adults, and she was in her 60s, early 70s, well, she never made it to 70, in her 60s anyway, uh, she was swearing like a fucking sailor. she obviously said, "Fuck it, I'm going to swear." And my wife, for example, she was very, very tight with the kids about swearing. And, my kids swear because I swear, but she was very tight about it and very conscious about it. She's a teacher, she's a mother, now a grandmother. And now that she's retired and not teaching anymore, we can be driving down the road. Um, Somebody cuts her off and she goes, "Watch what the fuck you're doing, you cocksucking motherfucker." I go, "Whoa, you kiss your granddaughter with that mouth? Jesus Christ." I feel like I influence people to swear. And I don't know if I feel bad about it or not, because it's not a big deal to me. It's just words. And if it upsets you, yeah, don't fucking listen. I get a lot of people telling me, "Oh, if you didn't swear so much, I'd really like you." Well, unfortunately, this is me. And if you don't like the swearing and you don't like me because of it, then you just don't like me. And I'm cool with that. I don't really fucking care. Anyway, she goes on to say, as far as the Supreme Court goes, Alito is projecting what he wants to see. He knows damn well that Congress can regulate him, all of them, but they're so used to the money that they have gotten from their pimps that they believe their own lies. Not only can Congress regulate them, but they can send them home without pay, which is what should be done to these prostitutes in robes. They must be held accountable for everything that they are doing to this country, starting with Thomas and ending with Handmaid's Tale Amy Coney Barrett. Again, thank you for letting me vent. I can't tell you how wonderful it is to listen to you every day. And like you've heard before, the comfort and knowledge that you give us is all priceless. Your loyal listener, Deborah from California. You can call me Debbie. We went through that one time before. I called her Debbie accidentally, and I know some people are touchy about, "No, my name's Deborah." It's like me. My name is Mike. You can call me Michael. You can call me Mike. I don't give a fuck what you call me. But what she was talking about with Alito in the Supreme Court is something I talked about yesterday, and that was that Alito came out. They're trying to run these bills through that will make the Supreme Court more accountable, and maybe give them a code of ethics, which I think should have been done a long time ago. It should have been there from the beginning. But Alito said that Congress has no oversight over them, which is absolutely ridiculous. I pointed that out yesterday. Deborah points it out here today, and it's absolutely fucking true. If not Congress, who does have oversight over the Supreme Court? I mean, I think they'd like to think that they don't have any oversight, that they don't need oversight, that they can police themselves. But what we're finding out about Clarence Thomas and what we're finding out about Alito and all the rest, they are doing a very good job at policing themselves. They're corrupt. They're pimping themselves out. They're taking money. They're taking gifts and trips and all kinds of stuff. If you were a regular federal judge, you wouldn't get away with it. So why would the Supreme Court judges or justices get away with it? That is something we definitely have to fix. That is a huge problem in this country. We have three branches of government, and if the Supreme Court is tainted or not credible, the entire system is a problem in this country. And unfortunately, the only way we can fix it is to wait till 2024, and assuming we get the control in the House, the Democrats, and in the Senate, and then we can maybe accomplish something. I think we should thank the Republicans for doing what they're doing. They're so awful. They're so flagrant that They're basically cutting off their nose to spite their face. They're just asking for a blue wave in 2024. And I honestly think that's what they're going to fucking get. All right. The next one comes from somebody who refers to themselves as old soul. I have a feeling that's somebody who's much younger than a boomer, but feels part of the group. And you should. I mean, you don't have to be a baby boomer to listen to the Rational Boomer podcast. We've got a lot of young people. We've had them on the show. Um, when I say rational boomer, it is kind of referring to myself because it's an oxymoron. You know, it all started with, if you saw me walking down the street, you might think, there's a fucking Trump humping, racist, misogynistic, anti-Semitic son of a bitch. But then when I start talking, they go, whoa, what's that? It's kind of like being on The Voice or one of those song things. You get this tiny little girl. She's like 7. And they come up, oh, she's cute. And they expect this squeaky little voice. But what comes out is fucking Aretha Franklin. And everybody's amazed. So when I started doing TikTok, they said, you have to have a niche. I go, I don't have a fucking niche. And then when I started doing the Rational Boomer thing, I quickly realized I do have a niche. I look like this, but I think like left-leaning folks. And I just happen to have the aptitude to talk constantly about it. So I just threw that out there and it works. Mostly it does. All right. The old soul says this. During a recent Hannity town hall, a woman asked Trump about his faith journey. His answering was confusing. Trump said, quote, when you look at what the FBI is doing to Catholics, they made them like the enemy. It's horrible. How could a Catholic ever vote for a Democrat or a guy like Biden again after that experience they're going through? What did Trump mean by that? The audience clapped and agreed with him. The fuck is that? Oh, I thought it was a fire alarm in here. I'm not gonna cut this out. It's an Amber Alert for somebody in Becker, Minnesota, 2-year-old. Anyway, by the time you hear this podcast, hopefully they will have found this child. But that noise, it happened one time before, and it was a fire alarm in this condo, and we all walked out, and there was nothing. And thinking that's just my luck, I had the problem with the power going out yesterday, and now I got a fire alarm. It's an Amber Alert. It's the phones. Okay, got it. Anyway, what Donald Trump said about the Catholics and what the FBI is doing to them, and she's asking, what did Trump mean by that? The audience clapped and agreed with him. That's typical of Donald Trump. He will say he can't answer a question. I don't think he even understands the question. Now, Old Soul goes on to say, did I miss something? Is there a new conspiracy I didn't hear about? Thanks, Boomer, Old Soul. Now, there's nothing new. It's just Donald Trump talking in his double speak. He's confused. He doesn't know what to say, so he just says a bunch of shit that doesn't mean anything. I mean, I think there is some investigations going on with the Catholic Church, mainly because of all the not sex trafficking, but child abuse that's going on in the Catholic Church. It's funny. Sinead O'Connor just passed away, and she was a great singer, and she got in trouble and basically canceled when she tore up a picture of the Pope back in the 70s or 80s or whatever it was, and said, fight the real enemy. Now, she was admonished for that because all the Catholics said, oh my God, how could you dare do that? Now, all these years later, turns out she was right to a certain extent. The Catholic Church is culpable for a lot of crimes and covering up those crimes. So Anyway, I don't know what Donald Trump was talking about. Donald Trump doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just saying words. He's throwing out a word salad, hoping he can get through it. I mean, this goes back to what I've said about Donald Trump. Um, Donald Trump is he's a buffoon. He's an idiot. He's essentially illiterate, but he thinks he's so smart. He thinks that he can say anything and talk his way out of anything. And clearly he can't. So, old soul, I don't know what he was fucking talking about. But frankly, I can listen to any speech he gives, and I can't tell you what he was talking about. In fact, he had a speech on Saturday. Um, this was a speech in Pennsylvania, Joe Biden's home state. Now, he had a bunch of insults, falsehoods, and digressions. Former President Donald Trump on Saturday evening, he bashed the criminal indictment against him. He attacked President Joe Biden and repeated his lies about election fraud at a rally in a bellwether region in Northwest Pennsylvania. Now, I was getting a DM from one of the listeners, and he was watching it, and I give him credit. I can't fucking watch that shit. It makes me too angry. I want to respond, but clearly I can't respond unless I talk about it here. So that's what we're doing. But every time Donald Trump speaks, it's a bunch of bullshit. It's a bunch of smokes and mirrors and lies and insults and all this stuff. I mean, he's a fucking child. And the people that listen and clap for it after it's all said and done, they're ignorant. They're absolutely ignorant. If you notice, every time they show Trump fan talking about Donald Trump, I don't know how they dress themselves. They aren't the brightest motherfucking people. Anyway, she goes on, the story goes on saying, in an unusually punctual appearance, yeah, he's usually late, Trump took the stage at 6 p.m. in front of about 4,000 people at the Erie Insurance Arena to repeat some of his greatest hits from his signature rallies and added a few new ones. Now, keep in mind, there were 4,000 people there. Today, he will tell people there were 40,000 people there. You know, that's just what he does. He exaggerates, he enhances everything to make him look good. 4,000 people showed up in Erie, Pennsylvania. That's not a big crowd. That's not a big crowd at all. Now, he promised to save the U.S. economy, purge the deep state from the federal government, and prevent World War III, which is where we're headed, Trump said. You're going to save the economy, Donald. Really? We talked about the economy here on the podcast just a bit ago. We've got unemployment at 50-year lows. We've got inflation coming down. It's less than half of what it was a year ago. Gas prices are coming down. Wages are going up. Even the stock market is doing pretty well. I think when Donald Trump left, it was around, the Dow was at like 30,000, and now it's like 36,000. I don't know where they get off talking about the economy. It's actually going really well. It's just that they want to keep putting this out in the ether to make people believe it's true. Don't believe what you see, what you hear. Don't believe what you're actually experiencing. Just believe what I tell you. It's bad. It's real bad. Then he's going to purge the deep state. Well, he said that in 2016 and 2000 and in 2020. Why between 2016 and 2020 did he not purge the deep state? What the fuck happened there? He also threw a dig at Philadelphia, one of his favorite targets of abuse, by blaming Democrats for the city's ongoing gun crisis. He says, has that city gone to hell or what? Oh, that's a brilliant thing to say when you're in Pennsylvania. Now it's so dangerous you can't walk outside to buy a loaf of bread. It's horrible. It's horrible what happened. It's frustrating listening to this shit. It's even more frustrating to know that there are 4,000 people in the crowd that will clap for this dumb motherfucker. Now, in addition to Philadelphia, Trump disparaged Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis, several other GOP presidential candidates, Fox News, prosecutors investigating him. You ever notice that everybody that says or does something negative to Donald Trump, it's all a hoax. They're all trying to get him. 26 women accused him of sexual assault. They're all lying. I mean, what's it take for somebody to say, Donnie, the entire world isn't against you? Some of these things you actually did, and maybe you should just own up and be accountable for them. But he won't fucking do that. Trump's rally comes 2 days after his lawyers went to talk to Jack Smith and the prosecutors. Um, and right afterwards, and I think Jack Smith did this on purpose, he announced new charges in the classified documents case, accusing him of asking a staffer to delete camera footage to obstruct the investigation. Now, we knew that there would be superseding indictments on the classified documents case. We'd heard that there might be as many as 30 to 45 new charges. So Trump's lawyers come in and talk some bullshit. All they basically said is he didn't do anything wrong. He just did what a bunch of lawyers told him to do. Lawyers who are now disbarred or sanctioned or whatever. So that's not even an excuse. That's not a defense. But then Jack Smith on the very same day comes out with these new charges. I think he did this on purpose to further bury Donald Trump with all the bullshit he was going to spew. Because if you listen to Donald Trump after the meeting, he goes, I think it went pretty well. I think we did all right. I think he understands that I did nothing wrong. No, motherfucker. Jack Smith is not going to go through all this stuff and say, maybe I did miss something. Yeah, you're right. You're perfectly innocent. Now, the Erie rally yesterday was the second time Trump visited Pennsylvania in a month after appearing at the controversial Moms for Liberty conference in Philadelphia on June 30th. Moms for Liberty. Oh, there's a fucking crazy group of women. Trump rattled off his support for conservative positions on a number of social issues, such as his support for the Second Amendment. Donald Trump doesn't give a shit about the Second Amendment. He just happens to think that that is going to get him votes and allow him to grift more money. And he's probably right. But Donald Trump honestly does not have a chance to win the presidency in 2024. People keep talking about it. They keep saying, well, he is the front runner in the primary, which is true. But when it all comes down, when Jack Smith comes out, and then right after Fani Willis comes out, he is going to be in no position to do anything. The real interesting thing about those two sets of indictments, they're going to involve a lot of people. I mean, Fani Willis is talking about RICO charges, and the point of RICO charges is to indict groups of people who might have been involved in conspiracies and that sort of thing. So that is going to be an ugly one for Donald Trump. And we may be a week or two away from that, but it's coming soon, probably before mid-August. Jack Smith stuff's coming out, and I'm curious as to how it's going to come out. As I've told you before, we're looking at the classified documents with these superseding indictments. You have the initial indictment and then more come out. And I wonder if Jack Smith didn't do that just to educate people on to what to expect with the J6 indictments. We may not get all the people we think should be indicted, but that doesn't mean it's not coming. If he indicts Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani and Mark Meadows, and that's it on the first set, a lot of people uninformed people, not people who listen to this podcast, but all the other fucks. They'll say, "Oh my God, they're not getting Congress. They're not getting Ginny Thomas or Roger Stone." Yeah, they're going to get them. It may not all come out in the first indictment, but we see now those superseding indictments are a real thing. They actually will happen. We saw it in the classified documents, and frankly, the indictments or the charges Donald Trump got in the superseding indictments, some of that's even worse than what came out in the first one. I mean, the whole thing about the document at Bedminster, that right there is a slam dunk against Donald Trump. He's on tape saying that he has a document. He's teasing it with him. Then afterwards says, "Well, I didn't really have a document. It was just a little bravado." But then now we find out that Jack Smith does in fact have the document he was describing, so it does exist. People in the meeting have said, yeah, it was a document. And of course, the audio recording. That alone is enough to put Donald Trump away. So anybody who thinks that that he's going to be running for president in 2024, I think they have another thing coming. I know there's a lot of people, we'll talk about this later, that think, well, he can run for president while he's in jail. In fact, he said that. I'm going to hold on to that. Let's talk about that after the break, because I noticed something with Donald Trump when he said that. That was a change in mindset for Donald Trump. It's almost like he's giving up, acknowledging that he's going to be charged, tried, and convicted. Anyway, tell you what, let's take a quick break and we will be right back. All right, we are back and we're continuing on with what we've got going here. Got plenty going on. Even though it's Sunday, Sundays aren't always easy because you got to dig around and find some shit. More bad news for Donnie. Donnie is the perpetual loser, perennial loser. He's losing all the time. Now, you might remember when E. Jean Carroll sued Donald Trump for defamation of character. She won to the tune of $5 million. And to celebrate, Donnie goes out the very next day in his town hall meeting and defames her a fucking again. And so now they are going to amend that lawsuit. But of course, he's got another lawsuit that E. Jean Carroll is in the process of now, too. It's a fucking mess, and he's going to continue to lose. So Donnie said to himself, well, I want to get in on some of that money. So what he does is he decides to sue CNN. Now, the reason he wanted to sue CNN for defamation is because they had the audacity to suggest that Donald Trump's claims of election fraud, when they called it the big lie, that's where Donald Trump felt like he was being defamed. Now, he was suing CNN for more than $400 million. He didn't really have a case, but he said, well, fuck it, we'll go for $400 million. A federal judge slapped down that lawsuit brought by former President Donald Trump against CNN because CNN said the big lie and Donald Trump got butthurt about it. Judge Rag Singhal, a Trump-appointed judge, Trump appointed this guy, dismissed Trump's $475 million lawsuit against CNN on Friday, ruling that the network's writers and television anchors that referred to Trump's numerous election lies as the big lie was opinion and did not amount to defamation. Well, even over and above the fact that it's opinion, it's fucking true. I mean, how do you sue somebody for telling the truth? You really can't. You just fucking can't. Now, in his lawsuit, Trump claimed the network use of the phrase likened him to Adolf Hitler because the big lie has been used to describe lies told by the Nazis to justify the horrors of the Holocaust. Well, there's a stretch. What about Make America Great Again? You stole that from Ronald Reagan, who stole it from somebody else. Now, the judge said being Hitler-like is not a verifiable statement of fact that would support a defamation claim. He wrote in his dismissal, CNN's statements, while repugnant, were not, as a matter of law, defamatory. Donnie loses again. And the great thing about this is that this judge was appointed by Trump in 2019. And Donnie Trump thought he had this system gamed here. He thought he was going to get the call and he was going to be able to sue CNN. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. They struck it down. Now, he's going to probably try to find some way to appeal it, and it won't work. I don't understand how Donald Trump loves being in court all the time. He keeps losing. He's got court cases all over the place. Now, Trump complains that CNN described his election challenges as the big lie because it was a lie. Now, Trump argues that the big lie is a phrase attributed to Joseph Goebbels, and that CNN use of the phrase wrongly links Trump with Hitler regime in the public eye. This is a stacking of inferences that cannot support a finding of falsehood. You said something kind of like what the Nazis said, so now you're calling me a Nazi. It's ironic that Donald Trump would file a defamation suit for as much as he defames people every fucking day, nicknames them, talks shit about them. This guy is absolutely oblivious. This guy is absolutely wacko. Now that might be defamatory. So Donnie, go ahead and fucking sue me. He won't. I'm not a big enough fish and I don't have 400 million. Now, according to a report from the Washington Times, should Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell decide to step down due to health concerns, Kentucky's Democratic governor already has made the constitutional case that he can pick a Democrat to fill the seat, despite a law the GOP majority passed in 2021. Now, Mitch McConnell is in trouble. He had that point where he froze while he was giving a speech. He just stared vacantly. He seemed scared. He seemed disoriented. And it was kind of a scary thing to watch. I mean, you didn't know if this guy was going to drop on the spot and die. He's 81 years old and he's not in the best of health. He's been falling all over the place. That's the one thing we find out. Not only did he fall in that hotel and ended up in the hospital and rehab for 2 or 3 months, not only did he freeze up in this particular press conference, but he's fallen multiple times before in the past year. That is troubling. And you would think at that point, you would want to consider retiring for your own health's sake or for the sake of the people you represent. Have somebody who can actually represent them. Now, the law had always been, if something happens to a senator, and this is most states, but particularly Kentucky we're talking about now, if, say, a senator dies in office or retires or resigns or something like that, then the job goes to the governor of the state they're from, in this case, Kentucky, and Andy Beshear is the governor. Then that governor would appoint somebody to fill that seat for the rest of the term, which would be, I think, 2024. The problem with that is, for Mitch McConnell and other Republicans, is Andy Beshear is a Democrat. So naturally, if he's going to appoint somebody to the Senate, he's going to appoint a Democrat. Well, Mitch McConnell was thinking ahead, which is rare enough for a Republican, but he knew he was in trouble physically and he knew he might keel over at some point, and then Andy Bashir would have the opportunity to replace him with a Democrat, giving a wider majority to the Democrats in the Senate. I got to be honest with you, if I'm close to death or I'm very sick, I don't give a fuck what's going on in the Senate. Maybe just focus on yourself. But that's not what he's doing. So he went to the legislators, the Republican legislators in Kentucky, and got them to pass a law that instead of the governor being able to pick anybody he wants to fill the seat for the rest of the term, that the Republicans in the legislature would have to put together a list of 3 people, and the governor would have to pick from that group of people. See what's going on. Mitch McConnell and the Republicans want to game the system. They would have loved this rule had it been a Republican governor, but because it's not, we got to change it, even though this has been on the books for decades and decades. And they did. It got to Andy Bashir. Andy Bashir vetoed it, but they have enough Republicans in the legislature there that they were able to overturn the veto with a supermajority. So the law stands now that if Mitch McConnell leaves office or any other senator leaves office, then the Republicans get to pull together 3 names, and Andy Bashir, the governor, has to pick from one of those 3. And you can presume they're all going to be Republicans. Once again, they're gaming the system. But Andy Bashir is saying, yeah, wait a minute. Maybe that's not what I'm going to do. He says constitutionally, he can pick a Democrat to fill the seat despite the law that the GOP majority passed in 2021. With questions being raised about how long the senior Republican will remain in Congress after an incident last week where he stood stock still and appeared unable to speak before reporters, he was led away by his colleagues. Attention in Kentucky has turned to who will be his inevitable replacement. As it stands now, McConnell's term does not expire until 2026. I'm wrong. It's not 2024, 2026. He was reelected in 2020. Senators have a 6-year term. So we are looking at, 3 years before he's up for reelection. Now, according to the Washington Times, in 2021, GOP's supermajority overrode Democratic Governor Andy Bashir's veto of a bill that requires the governor to file midterm vacancies in the U.S. Senate from a list of 3 candidates chosen by the state party of the previous sitting senator. That's weird in its own right. What if the majority in the Kentucky legislature was Democrat? The Republicans, the minority, would still be able to pick who's going to be senator? That sounds fucking stupid. That's not the case here. The Republicans have a supermajority, so it's not surprising that they want to pick it. Michael Abate, a Louisville attorney who has assisted the Kentucky Democrat Party, explained Bashir may ignore the law, appoint a Democrat, and challenge the Republican legislature to take him to court. Now, that sounds like something a Republican would do. I like that idea. I would imagine you would absolutely see a lawsuit on this. Well, no question. That's what Republicans do. He added, Bashir either says, hey, Republican Party, thank you for your list, but I'm appointing whoever I want, and then that immediately gets challenged in court, or you could see Bashir taking the route of filing a lawsuit. I mean, he's got the guts to defy it. Now, Washington Times Kerry Pickett reports in Kentucky, Mr. Bashir set the stage to challenge the 2021 law when he declared it unconstitutional and vetoed it. The legislature's Republican supermajority overrode the veto. In the veto message, the governor cited the U.S. Constitution's 17th Amendment passed in 1912, which states the legislature may empower the executive to make temporary appointments to fill a Senate vacancy. So it clearly does seem to be against the Constitution, but that doesn't mean anything to Republicans. They don't follow the Constitution unless it benefits them. So now they're trying to supersede the Constitution by this law from the Republican legislature, and Bashir could basically say, fuck yourself, sue me, which is probably what he should do. And but and he'd just do what the Republicans do, run out the fucking clock, take it to court, run it up till 2024, and then have a new election. But also have a Democrat filling the time when Mitch McConnell isn't there. Now the question is, can Mitch McConnell ride it out till 2026? Well, from what we've seen and what we've been hearing, yeah, I fucking doubt that. I doubt that. Now we've got the Dianne Feinstein thing too. Now she's done in 2024. They're trying to prop her up until 2024 so that, Adam Schiff can run for the Senate seat and presumably win it because he's got a lot of support. This whole thing about old people that can't walk, can't think, can't talk as representatives of us in Congress is absolutely ridiculous. They're not caring about how we're being served, which is why they're there in the fucking first place. They're only concerned about power. Now, at the time, Bashir wrote this: the bill upends a century of precedent by delegating the power to select the representatives of all Kentuckians to an unelected, unaccountable committee of an organization that represents only fractions of Kentuckians. The 17th Amendment does not authorize legislatures to direct how the governor makes an appointment to fill vacancies, and the legislature may not impose an additional qualification on who the governor may appoint beyond the qualifications for a United States senator set forth in the Constitution. This is going to be interesting. Well, it's going to be interesting, first of all, to see how long Mitch McConnell makes it. From what I've seen, from what I've heard, it can't be long. I mean, Dianne Feinstein should have been sent packing a while ago, but the Democrats are, like I say, propping her up. And you can guarantee that the Republicans are going to prop up Mitch McConnell as long as they can. In both cases with Feinstein and specifically Mitch McConnell, it's not just the seat, it's the power they represent, the power they wield. I mean, Mitch McConnell's been in leadership in the Senate longer than anybody in the history of this country. He represents a lot of power. And if he goes by the wayside, no matter who they appoint to fill his seat, Republican or Democrat, they won't be as powerful or have as much respect from their own party as Mitch McConnell has. They won't know what Mitch McConnell knows, so they're going to lose some power either way it goes. They just want to make sure it's Republican. And from what it sounds like, according to the Constitution, they got no case. The Republicans can pass a law, but we know that can be overturned too. We're seeing it with some of the gerrymandering shit they're doing. Get it to the Supreme Court and they say, now you got to fucking change it. Now, somebody might say, well, how can the governor just ignore it? Well, how can the governor of Alabama ignore the gerrymandering shit? Or how can Greg Abbott in Texas ignore what the DOJ says with all those buoys with the razor wire in the Rio Grande River? Anybody can do it. But the question is, are they right? And will it stand up in court? And even if it does stand up in court, will they follow the rules? Well, the governor of Alabama, I think it's Ivy, and Greg Abbott in Texas, they don't give a shit. The party of law and order doesn't believe in law and order unless it applies to somebody else, but not them. They can do whatever the fuck they want. It's going to be an interesting thing in Kentucky. I think Andy Bashir has the Constitution on his side. We'll see if we can get it through court cases. If he just says, fuck you, Republicans, I'm putting a Democrat in there. And then once the Democrat's in there, then they can sue him, and it'll take 6-8 months to get to court. And then it might take another 6 months They may win, they may lose, but by that time, we're so close to the 2024 election, doesn't fucking matter. Either way, if somebody's appointed to Mitch McConnell's seat, they're going to be up for re-election, and somebody else could go in there. It could be another Republican. But give us 16 months with an extra Democrat in the Senate, see what we can do with it. Now, with a recent superseding indictment in the criminal classified documents case, these were the extra indictments that came out on the classified documents case just a few days ago. This kind of puts his two co-defendants. There's Walt Nauta, and then there's this new guy, D. Oliveira, and he's either an superintendent of the property, or he's an IT guy, or he's fucking both. I don't know. They were both given the job to delete the hard drive for the surveillance video. Neither one of them knew what the fuck they were doing. So I got to think he would know how to do that if he was the IT guy. Maybe it's just a name Trump gave him. But it puts these co-defendants in an awkward position that might encourage at least one of them to flip on the boss, specifically Nauta. Walt Nauta is the body man of Donald Trump, and for the life of me, I still don't know what that means. I suppose I could fucking Google it, but I got better things to do with my time. But Walt Nauta seemed to be holding pretty strong to the fact that he's not going to flip on Donald Trump, which is the dumbest thing ever. Donald Trump is going to fucking go down. There's no question. And when he goes down, Walt Nauta will go down too. He could save his soul by turning on Donald Trump, but apparently he's not a bright man, and that's not what he's doing. So you know what Jack Smith did? He got this other guy, D. Oliveira, and D. Oliveira is going to tell on Walt Nauta, which is going to put him in deeper trouble and put him in jail longer. So I really believe that he indicted D. Oliveira, not because he really wanted to get him, but he wanted to give Walt Nauta a bit of a nudge to roll on Donald Trump. Now, former federal prosecutor Renato Mariotti appeared on Saturday on MSNBC and suggested that the new filings are confusing for Trump's aides who might not be aware of each other's movements. Mariotti previously said the indictment against Carlos de Oliveira in the classified documents case may reflect an effort by prosecutors to compel the third person to be indicted in the case to flip on the co-defendant, like I just said. Something's got to happen to Walt Nauta to get him talking. He hasn't been willing to up to now, which in my estimation is very fucking stupid, but, you know, they're all stupid. Mariotti said the new charges represent very powerful evidence against Trump, very powerful evidence that, frankly, is a very powerful account that realistically the jury is going to have a lot of trouble excusing, a lot of trouble ignoring. Now, Mariotti went on to say, you could say whatever you want about the Presidential Records Act or about declassification. The bottom line is destroying evidence. That's the sort of thing that the average person could get their head around. So that's really important. And there's also the dynamic between these two defendants. Now, these two minor defendants, they're going to try to flip against who's going to flip first. You've watched all the cop shows, you know, where they're interrogating two people and they're trying to get one person to flip. And then they say, well, you know, Bob's in the other room flipping now. It's all about who flips first as to who gets out from under this bullshit. And I'm sure that's the game that they're playing with them. That just makes sense. So the question is, who's going to flip first? Well, the smartest one is going to flip first. And I don't know how smart either one of these fucks are. Is one going to flip against Trump, or are they both going to flip? There's a dynamic now where Walt Nauta, he can't just be assured of the fact that he's going to be the low man in the trial. Now you have two potential employees, and neither of them know what the other might do. As I said, Jack Smith is very calculating. He knows what the fuck he is doing. Donald Trump knows he knows what he's fucking doing, so he's nervous. And these two co-defendants have to be nervous as well. And Jack Smith is counting on that with hopes that one of them will flip or both of them will flip now that there's pressure being put on them. Now, honestly, I don't know why you have to even apply that pressure. If you're a co-defendant with Donald Trump in the classified documents case, and if you have any sense at all, you can see Donald Trump is going to go down for this. He's clearly guilty of this shit. If you have common sense and you understand that, why would you continue to support him? Is it possible that Donald Trump has convinced him that, well, as soon as I get to be president, I'm going to pardon you. Well, Donald Trump first has to become president, which is not going to happen. He has no chance of becoming president. So you would think Walt Nada, and you would think this De Oliveira would say, boy, this is a sinking ship. We need to get the fuck out of this. I'll tell anything about anybody you want. But to date, they haven't done that. So hopefully this De Oliveira might be a little bit of a motivator for Walt Nada. And they better hurry because it looks like Jack Smith has a lot of evidence already. There is going to come a point when they don't need people to flip anymore. That opportunity to save yourself won't be there because Jack has enough evidence. We'll see what happens. This is an interesting one. NBC News reporter Gabe Gutierrez stunned Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis by bluntly reminding him just how far behind Donald Trump he is. DeSantis is focusing his efforts on Iowa, where he gave a speech Friday night at the 2023 Lincoln dinner hosted by the Republican Party of Iowa in Des Moines, where many other candidates, including Donald Trump, were on the bill. A recent Fox Business Network poll of the state had some rather discouraging results for the Florida governor. I'm going to tell you this. That fucker's going to bail from this primary. Ultimately, he's going to bail. He's going to have no choice. He's going to be throwing good money after bad money, and the people are just going to be tired of giving him money. We're already seeing that that people are pulling out, and some of his biggest donors are saying, yeah, not so much. I'm not going to do that. Now, on Friday night's edition of NBC Nightly News, the program's package on Gutierrez and his report on the DeSantis effort in Iowa included a brutal exchange in which Gutierrez interrupts DeSantis with some hard reality, and DeSantis pauses for a moment before giving the classic rebuttal. Says you. That was fucking brilliant. Oh, he's quite the orator. Governor Ron DeSantis says, if we make it about the vision for the future, we're going to win. Obviously, with me as the nominee, you know we're going to focus on Biden's failures and our vision for the future. That's what the election will be about. If Donald Trump is the nominee, it's going to be all about those other issues. Gabe Gutierrez says, with all due respect, Governor, you're down by 30 points, though. Governor Ron DeSantis says, after pausing, he goes, well, no, I mean that, well, says you. I mean, I can tell you, we've been in Iowa. I'm the one showing up at all these places. We're signing up people day after day here in Iowa, says you. No, the polls say it. The voters say it. Everybody's saying it. But Ron DeSantis is doing the same thing that Donald Trump does. Don't believe what you see or hear. Believe me, I'm winning. I'm fucking winning. No, Ronnie, you're not winning. And eventually you're not going to be able to afford it anymore. And you're going to bail on this fucking thing because you're a loser. Now, that jarring record scratch sound effect you heard was actually in your head. This is what they say in this report. Um, and the thing is, they're absolutely right. It's you hear somebody say something so ridiculous, and then you realize this motherfucker's the governor of Florida and running for the president of the United States. I think if we've got one big problem in this country, we got too many stupid people in power. They don't understand what their fucking job is. They don't understand the policies and all the problems and international problems. These motherfuckers don't have any business doing much of anything but a blue collar type thing where they can't hurt anybody. But as we sit here, we've got a lot of dumb people in politics, and we've got a lot of dumb people voting for other dumb people. That may be one of the biggest problems we have in this country at this point. And that's why I've always said, let's not only give the people who have student loans forgiveness. Let's give everybody a fucking free education. We're in a crisis situation here. We got to get some more smart and educated people because we got a lot of dumb motherfuckers out there. Now, apparently Donald Trump hasn't learned any lessons. He's been repeatedly threatening that his prosecutions will lead to violence and unrest. But the former president is nevertheless unlikely to be locked up for pretrial detention. So says some legal experts. Now, he doesn't come right out and attack, but he did what he did on January 6th. He makes some leading statements to get the people that follow him, angry and to rise up and do something about it. The fact of the matter is, it's not been very successful. Nothing happened in Manhattan. Nothing happened in Florida. Nothing's going to happen in Georgia or Washington, D.C. These people are in a much different situation. They're not really feeling the need to fight for Donald Trump. They saw what happened to their compatriots in Washington on January 6th. Got like 1,000 people in jail. They aren't going to want to join their buddies in federal prison. But there's a legal expert. His name is Norm Eisen, very smart guy. He says, unfortunately, courts are going to give him very broad deference. White House, Eisen was a lawyer in the Barack Obama White House who more recently worked on the House first impeachment of Trump. That is the price of the First Amendment. And that's what Donald Trump will say. I have the First Amendment. You can't do anything to me. And that's not entirely true. The First Amendment doesn't guarantee you to say anything you want and not have any accountability for it. It just says you can say it. The government can't do anything to you, but that doesn't mean you can do things illegally. Trump, who's again seeking the Republican nomination for the presidency, he's not really asking for violence. He's intimating violence, and that's enough to whip these dumb fucks up, because that's exactly what is happening at this point. He's playing the same game that he played on January 6th. Now, on July 18th, the day he announced he had been informed by special counsel Jack Smith that he was a target of the grand jury investigation for January 6, 2021, the attack, the coup attempt. Trump shared a post with his millions of followers that featured a recording of him saying, if you fuck around with us, if you do something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before. Now, what you have to understand, that statement was actually made by Donald Trump, but it had nothing to do with the situation we're currently in. It had to do with Iran and Iran's threats of bombs and fighting and all that stuff. So that's what Donald Trump said to Iran. So people would say, well, that discounts that whole comment. We can't believe that Donald Trump believes that, because we know he made that statement regarding something else. But But the thing about it is this meme that was put out was retruthed by Donald Trump. While he didn't say it about this current situation, he did agree with the meme regarding this situation. So he didn't say it regarding this, but he sure agrees with it now, doesn't he? Now, the same day in an interview with an Iowa radio host, Trump warned, I think it's a very dangerous thing to even talk about because we do have a tremendously passionate group of voters, much more passion than they had in 2020 and much more passion than they had in 2016. What he's basically saying there is you think 2020 and January 6th was bad. Oh, you ain't seen nothing yet. He's doing two things there. He's trying to incite the dumb fucks that might agree with him on that. But at the same time, he's trying to cloud the issue. And he's trying to intimidate. He's trying to intimidate Democrats. He's trying to intimidate Democratic politicians, the president. And it's just not going to work because the situation isn't anything like January 6, 2021. Donald Trump was the president. He was able to protect people. He's not the president anymore. These fucks go into any kind of attack like that, and it's going to go so badly for them. They're going to be met with lethal attacks back at them. So they're not going to step into this thing. He's trying to incite people. I would think he's realizing now that incitement isn't working after Manhattan and Florida, but he doesn't know what else to do, so he's trying to intimidate by putting it out to the country. You think January 6th was bad, it's going to get worse, and then hoping that the Democrats and the rest of the public will say, oh, please don't do this to Donald Trump. I'm too scared. Well, Donnie, nobody's fucking saying that. Nobody's scared of you anymore. You don't have any power anymore. Now, even in a social media post Thursday confirming that his lawyers had met with Smith in an effort to discourage another indictment, Trump hinted that new charges could come at a price. That's what he said. An indictment of me would only further destroy our country. What did he mean by that? Did he mean the divisiveness and the adversarialness of all of this? Well, it's already at a level we've never seen before. Glenn Kirshner, a former prosecutor who spent decades in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, said that kind of language, had it come from a gang member he was prosecuting, he would have quickly resulted in a request to the judge to deny bail based on the defendant's clear danger to the community. Anytime I had evidence of threats by a defendant against a witness, as often as I did, as I spent 22 of my 30 years prosecuting murder cases, I would present that information at the first court appearance. And that's the thing. That's something we heard about with the Miami thing. Is he a current and clear and present danger? Well, he kind of is, especially in the classified documents thing. We don't know if he still has classified documents. We know he's trying to incite people to violence, so he is a danger to this country and the people in it. So he should be held without bail, but he probably won't because he's a former president, and they're afraid of what it might create. And it's frustrating because if anybody should be held without bail, it's Donald Trump. But I just don't think they're going to do it. I think the best we can hope for is that he gets indictment after indictment, charge after charge, and he just gets buried by legal process, and he just can't move. He's emotionally broken, he's physically broken, and he's going to court cases like every other day, and it's just going to be too much. It's going to be overwhelming for him. That's really the best we can hope for. The idea that might hold him without bond, I just don't see that happening. They're too afraid of what might occur if they do that. Don't get me wrong. I would love that they do it. In fact, I think they should do it. I just don't see them doing it. And it's sad. I mean, these are some of the things we need to address once Donald Trump is in jail, once the Republicans are out of power. We got to straighten a lot of shit out, from not being able to indict a sitting president to all the luxuries Congress enjoys, putting some teeth back into the power of Congress so people can't ignore subpoenas, the whole process of appealing and just stretching things out and running out the clock. Our judicial system, our Congress, is a lot weaker than we imagine. And we didn't know that until somebody like Donald Trump comes along and tests it. But now that he's tested it and it's been seen by everybody, it's conceivable down the road we might get another president that is just as bad or worse than Donald Trump, and he will test the same norms, not laws, norms. And that's the difference. They can't be norms anymore, because that's like putting everybody on the honor system. Well, we know now that not everybody in politics is honorable. So that honor system does not fucking work. So anyway, we'll see. I just don't think he'll be held without bond. I'm anxious with this next week coming up, starting tomorrow, to see some of the activity in the courts, see if the indictments come out, see if we hear more news about Fani Willis in Georgia. The whole idea that that's coming out in a couple of weeks and there will be RICO charges is particularly exciting, especially since the fact that this is a state charge. And when he's convicted, whether he got to be president or another Republican got to be president, he can't be pardoned. A president can't pardon state crimes or state convictions. So that's got to be very troubling for Donald Trump. Donald Trump's got a lot hanging over his head. I just don't think he'll be able to continue to handle it. I just don't. I don't think he'll make it to 2024. He's going to be fucking absolutely buried. All right, we're going to wrap things up for the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. It's Monday, and let's see if things about to get started. Have a good day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.